cut me out?
Yeah.
Okay.
I say that in the viewfinder, yes, but I don't know when I put it up there what it looks like.
Yeah, that's everybody that. Yeah.
So baby boy, Jan, huh? 7 pounds?
Yes.
Delano?
Delante. Real Irish name.
Is that right?
No,
No, I didn't think so.
not even close.
I don't know, maybe I missed something.
Oh. You're not going to say anything.
Blake, I went in and talked to her. She's going to write up that letter. I told her to be very detailed.
Okay,
And we should get it by tomorrow.
all right, that's what we need.
Yeah,
We need it
that's
as
what I
soon as
said.
possible.
That's what I told her. I said be real detailed too, so if you're reading it, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Right. We just want it out of there fast.
Yeah, no, I explained it all. And I talked to them how we would submit it, because it doesn't exist yet. So we have to earmark it. You know, in the memo or whatever.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. This is purely an informational meeting to provide people with an update on where we're at with Little League Drive. We will not be recording the meeting since this is only an informational meeting. It's not an actual public hearing. For those who regularly attend council meetings, there probably isn't going to be a lot of information that you don't already know. We just felt that it was important to at least share what we do know at this time with the public and give people an opportunity to hear what is happening at this point in time. What I'll do is I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about where we're at. I'm going to have our city assessor, Dave Morano, talk a little bit about the tax situation with the homes. And then we did have a few questions submitted by residents, and we'll go through those. And then, once we go through this information, I'll give people the opportunity to come up to the mic and ask other questions. What I ask is that you limit your time to 3 minutes, ask your question, make your comment, and then take your seat and we'll answer it. And I want to give everybody that wants the opportunity, I want to give everyone the opportunity to say something. And hopefully, we're not going to keep anybody here too late. We're hopefully going to be out of here by about 8:30. Now, first of all, a number of years back, the city obtained permission from the state legislature there was authorization to alienate Little League Drive as a portion of parkland attached to Betts Park. Right now, that's all it is an authorization. We haven't taken any action to actually alienate that area. And there's two things, and one major thing required with the alienation of that, and that would be a seeker. It's basically an environmental review that would take place, and that has to be done. And then also, we have to come up with one of two things: either an exchange of land to replace the parkland that's being removed, or a financial exchange where we're putting the appraised value of that land into a current park. So one of those two things has to happen. Now, to date, what all the council's done so far is we gave the mayor authorization to negotiate a contract with Natalie Builders to build the homes. At such time that there is a contract prepared, it'll come back to the council for approval. So right now, nothing has transpired. You know, another issue with this is that I think, just going by some of the letters, there seems to be misinformation out there as to what exactly would happen with this. The main basis for the contract would be that the development would be handled in two phases. The land would be transferred at two separate times. Half the first phase and the other half of the land the second phase. The first phase would call for 26 homes at a land purchase price of $120,000, and that would be payable upon closing that transaction and then moving forward with that transaction. The second phase would be 30 units with a land purchase price of $72,000 that we would get paid right up front. Now, the infrastructure would be paid by Natalie Builders. That would mean the roads, the lighting, the sidewalks, the water and sewer lines. There's no expense by the city to the infrastructure. The only expense that would be incurred by the city would be, for anyone who's familiar with that back portion of that area, there's a bike path back there, and it would have to be moved a little bit farther back. It has to be relocated a little bit, and the city would handle the relocation, and we'd maintain ownership of it. I mean, that's, in a nutshell, that's really the basis of where we're going from at this point in time, is that we'd sell the land, Natalie would put in the infrastructure, they'd build, and then start building. Now, and I'll get into it a little bit, because I'm sure there's going to be questions about, well, what if this happens and what if that happens? Bear in mind, a lot of this is premature because we still don't have a contract at this point. thing to understand is that the city, the goal all along was for the city to invest nothing and to put out no money for this project. And to make it a project that was a win-win for us one way or the other. What I'd like to do is I'm going to call the city assessor forward, and I'm going to ask Dave Morano to speak on two subjects. One, briefly talk about the appraisal that was done on the property and how that relates to us getting $192,000 for the land. And then I'm going to have him talk about the tax situation and exactly how that would impact the city. I mean, bear in mind, right now, and for as many years as Tonawanda has been a city, we've gotten exactly nothing for that land, financially. There's no financial remuneration for that property at all. So I'm going to let our city assessor talk a little bit about those two subjects.
Thanks, Carl. You want me to speak to you guys or turn around and do it?
Just spin it around,
Okay.
so that you can talk to me.
Good evening. I'm Dave Morano, the city assessor. What I want to talk about, I'm going to set my notes here real quick here, is the first thing Carl talked about was the appraisal. And what we did about 3 months ago, we petitioned Eminger, Newton, Pigeon, Magyar, which is a leading appraisal company in Western New York. Their offices are over in West Seneca, they do business all across upstate New York, to do an appraisal on the property. We asked them to provide us with two values. The first value was a value as raw land. What would somebody pay for this as raw land? So like any appraisal, and again, we have copies here and everything, they look at other similar sales of land throughout the area. They looked at some sales in Amherst and Tonawanda. Unfortunately, within the city proper, we haven't had a large land sale like that, so they got to look at some other areas. And they come up with a value that is raw land. The number would be $250,000, and that was the appraisal that came in. And it was based on more current things. There were some appraisals you probably read about. They were done in 2008. They were very old. The data was old. They really were of no use, and we had to get an update. We also asked them to do a second value, which would be a hypothetical value that if a developer was buying it, under the knowledge that the subdivision would be approved, but they would have to pay for all the infrastructure development, also handle all the holding costs, because you got to remember, when you develop a subdivision, when you go from raw land to streets, curbs, and developable lots, all of a sudden new assessments are placed on those. And they don't just sell overnight. Usually there's a 6 or 8 year time frame to sell it. And the developer has holding costs, they're paying taxes on their property, et cetera, et cetera. So they use what's called a discounted cash flow analysis, and I won't bore you with the details, but it's a way of looking at the future cost of money and what you're going to pay now. And that number came in at $90,000. So the number that the city has decided on with the developer, again, as Carl said, no contract signed, is $192,000, which in my opinion is a very fair number. It comes out to roughly about $12,000 an acre. And again, I think that is a fair number, but that's how the value was developed. And when you look at subdivision sales, I am the former assessor for 6 years in Lancaster. When you look at raw land that's sold for subdivisions in Lancaster or Clarence, the numbers generally are about $10,000 to $20,000 per acre. So at $12,000 per acre, that's a fair number in my opinion. So I think what we've asked Natalia to pay, and hopefully that contract gets all negotiated, is a fair number. So that's the value piece. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about is there's been a lot of questions regarding assessments, how these properties are going to be assessed. And I've got some things here. I actually made some extra copies, not enough for everybody, we can make you more copies, but I want to kind of go through the law, give you kind of a real 30-second primer on how we value properties. There's 3 ways you value property: a market sales approach, a cost approach, and an income approach. Traditionally, on residential property, you use what's called a market sales approach. You've got a 1,000-square-foot ranch on Fletcher, built in 1960. We look at other 1,000-square-foot ranches that have sold in and around that neighborhood, of the same age, the same neighborhood, same style, and we try to develop a value. Traditionally, on a residential property, that's how values are determined, whether it's the value I do as the assessor, a value that a real estate agent may do, a value that an appraiser may do. That's how you determine value. The second way is the cost approach, which is rarely used in any methodology. It's only generally used for highly complex properties like the Huntley power plant, things that don't rent, don't sell, and what have you. The third way is a method called the income capitalization method. And it's generally used for properties that are rented, apartments, plazas, those kind of things, where as an investor, if you're buying that property, you want to know, well, how much rent am I going to get from that? And that's going to determine what you may pay for it. What happened back in the late 70s were two laws were put into place. One was Real Property Tax Law 581. The other was Real Property Law 339Y. They were developed initially for the New York City market as apartments were being converted into condominiums. One real important thing to know is that condominium is a form of ownership. To say I live in a condo, well, you might live in a townhouse, you might live in an apartment, you may live in a single-family detached home like is being proposed for Little League Drive. Condo is the form of ownership. So the condo form of ownership, these laws were put in place, and they started in the mid-70s and carried now to the current times. And there's two laws. The first one is Real Property Law 339Y, which states that each condominium unit together with the common interest be assessed as one per parcel. The second part of the law is Real Property Tax Law 581, which says, in simplest terms, condominium units are to be valued for purposes of real property tax by using a capitalization of income approach, not a market sales approach. So as an assessor, I have to value those properties that are granted condo status differently than I value other properties. Now, who grants condo status? Condominium status is granted by the New York State Attorney General. A developer comes in, they file a condominium offering plan, usually it's about that thick, costs them $85,000 to $100,000. They go through a variety of steps. The Attorney General reviews it. The Attorney General then says, yes, you've got condominium status, and the assessor in the municipality gets a letter that says, this property has been granted condominium status and needs to be valued that way. Currently, we have a property in the city that is valued that way, the Mill Creek Townhouse. When you look at other communities, in Amherst, I venture to say that 3,000 to 4,000 properties have condominium status. In Lancaster, we had about 450. Clarence, probably close to 1,000. It is a growing way of valuing property, okay? We as a municipality can't really stop it if the Attorney General grants it. I mean, I may not like it, okay, but we have no way of stopping it. Now, what happens then, right? And I'm going to go through some numbers here real quick. And again, I have a handout here that I certainly can pass around, but it's a lot of financial numbers. But what it does is, traditionally, again, we value residential property on a market sales approach, what it sells for. In these cases, we have to develop, and again, I'll have these up here and you can certainly hang out and see them. We have to use an income capitalization method, where basically we determine a rent, what the unit would rent for. We look at other house rents, apartment rents, townhome rents. We develop a rental number. That's the top number, because that's the revenue. From that, we subtract vacancy and collection, an expense ratio, and we come up with what's called a net operating income. We capitalize that based on a cap rate. Now, a cap rate basically is determining the level of risk or the level of investment. There are national firms that we use. There's one out of actually Syracuse called Ryan Murphy, which is an appraisal firm, actually out of Rochester, excuse me. And they provide cap rates and different things that we use. And then you come up with a value. You've heard a lot of people say, well, it's going to be 60%. Not necessarily true. Up until about 5 years, many assessors didn't really know how to handle the value. So they'd say, okay, you build a new townhome for $200,000, we'll assess it at 60%. Now we actually go through a very sophisticated financial review of that, and the number comes in roughly about 60 to 70%. What I'm anticipating, based on my initial pro forma, is that these properties will be assessed for about $160,000, even though the selling price is going to be about $225 to $250. We're not quite sure, but it's based on what they would rent for, the expenses, the capitalization, and then a rate that we put it. Now, one of the issues that has come up is people have said, well, these property owners are gonna pay 60% of what I pay in taxes. Not necessarily true. So let's use the example we talked about. Currently in the city of Tonawanda, the average assessed home is assessed for $88,000. So on a property that's assessed for $88,000, we're going to use the number called true taxes. So it doesn't include any exemptions, basic, star, veterans, aged, whatever. The tax rate, your combined city, county, and school rate here is about $40 per thousand. So in a house that's assessed at $88,000, they're going to be paying roughly, they pay roughly in gross taxes, $3,520. Now that's gross. You're going to save about $500 on star and what have you. These properties assessed at $160,000 will pay $6,400 a year in taxes. So they're still paying almost double what the average homeowner in the city would pay. In addition, the roads that are in there, while we're going to plow, the maintenance of those things are the responsibility of the condominium homeowner association. So our DPW guys won't be repaving, won't be fixing potholes, and those kind of things. That's the responsibility of the homeowners. They form a homeowners association and pay a fee. Might be $100, maybe $125 a month to pay for those kind of things. So the law itself is a state law. It is a law that we have properties in the city already receiving. Quite frankly, in my opinion, and I came from a community where there was a lot of new development, a lot of new construction. In the town of Lancaster, we average about 100 to 125 new homes a year. If these properties were assessed from a market approach, and assessed, let's say, at $240,000, their tax bill would be $9,600 a year. And quite frankly, I don't think we should even put a shovel in the ground if that was the case. I truly believe that this methodology, that this type of law, is the best way for this project to be the most successful for the city of Tonawanda. So that's kind of my information. You want to answer any questions, Carl? Or?
Well, I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to go through the questions I already have.
Okay.
And then if you want to just sit with us up here,
Oh, sure.
and then when the questions do come, you can.
No problem.
You can.
Yes. Oh, you sure?
Yeah, I'll go back there.
So just to continue with where Dave left off as far as maintenance. The street, one thing will happen with the roads through the development. The city will maintain a right-of-way, and what that will do is that'll allow us to plow through there. Because otherwise, we'd be in a situation where we would plow in the park and then we'd stop and come from Fletcher and stop. So we still have a right-of-way so we can plow right through. They're responsible for garbage, the sewer, the sidewalks. Erie County Water, of course, would take care of the water lines. The lights, the lighting in the development. It's all handled by the homeowners association and or the developer himself. Kind of, hopefully, there's, as far as the questions that were submitted, some of them, they're more in, like a written form and with commentary. Like here's some questions, and bear in mind, anything that has to do with the homes or the homeowners association, that all of that is too premature. We haven't even gotten to that point yet. So the cost of the homeowners association, we don't know at this time. The cost of the homes, we've been told we're looking at $200 to $250. Of course, Mr. Morano talked about the tax situation, the style of homes, how long before they're built, all that stuff that would come farther down the road. They want to know about purchasing. That's all handled through the developer. That's not something the city would handle. Some other questions that came up, why do we need to build so many houses? Now, originally, and I realize it's not a big difference, but originally it was 60 and it was cut to 56 so we could meet the requirements of our building code, which is 70 by 120 lots. And as far as the amount of houses, it was strictly based on the developer, on the thought of how much it would take to make it a good investment on their part. It was, the original reason for this project was to increase the tax base. With the current condo status, the city will only collect 60 to 65%. How is this beneficial? And won't we be losing more than we're gaining? Well, since today we get nothing, and when you're talking about city, school, and county bringing in about, probably on the low end, $6,000, we can only benefit. I mean, it's not, there's no loss here. And if the new homeowners are going to be members of an association, won't they expect special treatment? Whatever treatment they get will be within their homeowners association. It won't have anything to do with the rest of the city or how we operate. Is Natalie going to be required to put the infrastructure in for the entire 16 plus acres? Yes, but not all at one time. It's going to be in the 2 phases. First phase, I'll put in the infrastructure, and then when it gets to the second phase, we can go from there. Can Wadsworth Avenue stay closed as there are already 3 access streets? Currently, Little League Drive and Wadsworth would be open to the project. Let's see. Doesn't Erie County Water have responsibility for the water mains? Yes. The streets don't have to be dedicated to us, we just have to maintain it right away, and they'll maintain the road. Impact of school or county taxes, it's straight across the board. Whatever they're assessed at, everyone gets paid the same. It's not like, there is some tax programs where every entity has to opt in. In this case, that's not the case. It's straight across the board for city, county, and school taxes. Has the city been presented with an offering plan prior to approving contract? No, I gave you the basic points, but there's a lot more to it, and right now we have attorneys working with the mayor to develop a contract with Natalie.
There's a question about, can the city sell the land with a market rate clause? The appraisal basically tells us what the market rate is. So we are getting, you know, fairly, quite frankly, I think we're getting a little better than what the market would pay, to be honest with you.
There's another question about garbage. That the average house pays $135 and Grand Island pays $185 per house. Actually, in the city, it's about $213 per house for garbage collection. And that's obviously a cost that we wouldn't bear because they'll have to pick up their own garbage. I got another letter, and it primarily speaks to the process and the seeker with the land. And the only thing I can tell people is that it will be a full-blown seeker that will look at the environmental impact, the traffic. It'll look at that area as far as wildlife, forestry. It's going to look at all the impacts. It's going to look at the impact of coming from the park into the development. So, I mean, it's difficult for me to say right now, you know, more specifics on that, but that's a general idea of what a seeker's going to look at. question, well, it was more of their comments on the project, and it mainly focused on they were in favor of the project, assuming we didn't pay for the infrastructure. Let's see. Are utilities going underground? Yes. School taxes 100% evaluation? No. It's just like the city, whatever they're assessed at, so it's probably going to be in that 60 to 70 range. How soon can we expect construction? Well, like I said, at this point in time, we don't even have a contract, so I can't, right now, I can't fathom a guess how much we're talking about in time frame. I have another letter from an individual that's in favor of it and what it can do for our tax base here in the city. How will taxpayers benefit from the sale and development of Little League Drive? Well, it does a few things. Number one, it increases our tax base, which is a major focus for us to try to find ways to offset rising costs. It also benefits us, it allows people that maybe left the city who would like to come back but want a newer home. Maybe people that live in the city and want a bigger, newer home, or just a newer home to stay in the city and not move out. It develops a piece of property that, and while I certainly do understand some people, the green space is very important, and I understand that. But it also, for a lot of the city residents, it develops a piece of property that has primarily sat vacant for a number of years, other than, well, probably like 15 years since there was any baseball played over there. Will property assessments based upon, oh, I already talked about that, they're even across all this, the three city, school, and county taxes. Future city funding required for police, fire, and public works? No. Then there was some questions. If this is not a done deal, then why is he advertising coming soon? Guess he knows something we don't. This is talking about the Natali website. Well, obviously, as a builder and taking a positive approach, he's assuming that he can work out a deal where he can build these houses, and he wants to create excitement from people who do want to purchase one of these homes. Now, if something doesn't work out, it'll just come off the website, which is exactly what happened before, because it was on the website before and it came off. Why is he so interested in building here when he clearly knows the value of a good school district? Well, I'm not going to speak to the school district, but from his standpoint, obviously there's some tremendous pluses for anyone who would want to live up in that area. You're close to the waterfront. It's easily accessible to the thruway. It's close to the school. It's a beautiful area. I mean, there's a lot of pluses to build in that area. But, you know, stuff like that, he would have to specifically answer more of why he'd like to build there. Why aren't other developers whose home prices are more conducive to this area given a chance? Now, it's been a while. When we did the original RFP, we got 3 responses. One came from Natali, one came from Burke Homes, and one came from, I can't think of the other company. You know, it's John Dewar, but he had a name for his company. Yeah. Anyway, John Dewar's homes were strictly patio homes, and they were definitely going to be in the 275 to 325 range, but they were strictly patio homes. Then, when the council looked at Burke and Natali, the choice was made that we felt that we got a better product at the time. We felt we were getting a better product from Natali, and that was the decision that was made. Now, there has been some contention that other developers may or may not have been interested recently. in this project. I do know for a fact that a couple individuals have spoken to a couple of developers who said they were not interested, but other people have said they've spoken to people that said they were. The bottom line is, right now, we're still negotiating with Natalia. What I found, a lot of times, a lot of things get said, but when push comes to shove, nothing ever happens. We have the old waterfront property back here that we put out an RFP for developing that property. And we had at least 6 individuals say that they were interested. When the RFPs were due, we didn't get one return. Not one. So, you know, sometimes things are said, but nothing ever takes place. Just because Natalia is a good salesman doesn't make it a good deal for the city. Did you ever hear the saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is? Well, in every situation, both sides are going to pay, one way or the other. There's got to be give and take, or there's never going to be any kind of a deal. A development that's currently underway in Buffalo paid for the infrastructure. In our particular case, there's no cost involved to the city. And the tax, assuming they go and they receive the authorization for the 339Y, yes, we will not collect the 100% of the taxes, but it's what we will collect and what we will add to our tax base versus what's there now, which is nothing. We understand the need to bring revenue into the city, but you need to cram 56 homes into a recreational area. And that's really, there's really no other questions on that one. And certainly, anybody else on the council or the mayor is, it's not about me. I'm just trying to convey information to everybody so that everybody has a better handle on where we're at this point. So,
Carl, can I, this is me.
Go ahead.
All right. It was brought up about the school district, okay? I've had 3 kids go through the school district. 2 of them are teachers right now. I know people that are doctors. I know people that are veterinarians. The school district is a good school district. Anybody that says that the school district is not a good school district, they have a problem. Look at the school district. Okay? I mean, they've all gone through it. I mean, Kim Parkill, she's a veterinarian. Joe Bart, he's a doctor. Brad and Brandy Boyle, they're teachers. They went through the City of Tonawanda School District. It's a good school district. You look at the ratings, you look at where the rankings are and stuff like that, it's down low. Okay, fine. But with the school district, they're working their way up. I mean, if you look at, I said on some things right now, our rankings right now for reading and stuff like that, they're starting, they're above and beyond what the average, what the average is. So people that are saying that the school district's a bad school district, they really don't know. Thanks, Carl.
Go ahead.
In regards to the condo association, there's a lot of questions on it, at least. I belong to the homeowners association here. I'm familiar with what we do here. Remember, they will be the members of the association. People live there. They will make all their rules except they can't supersede our rules. So if they want to have 2 dogs, and the city says you can have 2 dogs, you can have 2 dogs. If they want to say we'll have parking on both sides of the street, and it doesn't supersede our rule, then they have parking on 2 sides of the street, as long as it's safe. So they will assess themselves, as we do. Every time they have a meeting, several times a year, they have a board of directors. They will decide how much money they each need to operate. They can even say that they will insure home on the outside, like ours is insured, and the association pays. So there's a lot of things they can do. They can say that, well, we don't want no disc on the roof. If they make that rule, that's their association within their own compound. They rule the roost, but they pay for it. And we pay $225 a month here. We don't own the streets, we don't own anything, we own the land, and the association owns the land. And there's some other things, they pay for the insurance and so forth. But remember, they make their own decisions. We cannot interfere in what they do, only if they supersede the rules and laws of the city. So basically, they're paying for what they're getting, and they have to keep paying. And when anybody sells a home and the new owner buys it, he is buying that responsibility too. It's not that you can live there for 5 years and move and say, I don't want to pay this. Everybody's got to be in, no opting out, unless they allow it, which I doubt they would. So all the expenses, garbage, as he mentioned, and so forth and so on, they have to come up with. Police and fire, naturally, first aid, you're not going to deny them first aid. You know, they're paying 60% of police. So if the police have to go in there, fire have to go in there, they go in there. If there's a disaster, a storm, sure, our highway department's going to help them out. They're our neighbors. And as far as the schools, you know, you might get a lot of their young people, their kids are probably in our schools. Our business people in the city will gain because they'll shop at Tops and Main Street. So there's a gain there when you get more new people into the area. And it's a plus. Thank you.
Just one thing too, as far as the Tally Builders, I had a lot of experience with them in my years in Lancaster. They did a very large project there called Nicholas Estates. It's located on William Street in the south end of Lancaster. Very well respected. They follow the rules, follow procedures. Our building, Jeff Simi, the building inspector in Lancaster, always spoke highly of them. Not to say that the other folks aren't good either, but these folks have got a very strong, proven track record in Western New York. I've worked with them to build a quality product, and I think a property that the city would be proud to have.
And another thing about, when we talk about the properties, an option that's going to be afforded people is what's called basically green technology. Have the option to have your home built in such a fashion that you won't have any electric or gas bills. It deals with solar panels,
Geothermal.
yeah, geothermal heating. So that will certainly be a plus for people that choose that option. And you know what everybody needs to understand too is, okay, so let's assume we sign a contract. It doesn't end there. Then the Tally, who's made a decision based on his company, whether or not he can sell these homes, he has to go to the bank for financing. And the bank is going to make that decision too, whether or not these houses can be sold, because they're just not going to hand over the money. I mean, this is something that the bank's going to have to give the okay to. And
Carl, what was the figure for putting, the city was to put infrastructure in? What was the figure that we had?
well, you know, 1.8 million for infrastructure. Now, bear in mind, that's 1.8 million today. So if it was bonded, you're probably looking at about $2.6 or $2.7 million for the infrastructure. I think what I'm going to do, because I want to make sure, I want to give people the opportunity if they'd like to ask a question or like to make a comment, just open up the floor and give people the opportunity to come up and say something or whatever you choose.
I have just a quick question. My name is Gary Cotley. I live on Fletcher, Liberty Drive. And there's a lot of traffic going by there, people going into the park. Could access to the park be closed off from Fletcher Street with the homeowners association?
Could they close it off?
Yeah,
No.
because you were saying that
No,
you got the right of
because
way, but do we have the right of way?
We maintain it right away so they couldn't close it.
Is that for the city or for the?
That's for us. That's for, well,
Citizens
that's,
or the city? I mean, like you're saying, like the Department of Public Works can go through, like, can the
No,
citizens
it's for us.
access the park?
they can't.
It's for
go.
Jan. Jan uses that as a cut-through.
I'm just wondering, so it couldn't be a gated community, they couldn't
No.
close it off?
No.
All right.
On that question, if there's a car on their street that they own, and they want to remove, they can have it removed by calling the police.
Oh, so it's like.
We have a private road here
Yeah,
that there were people parking there, I had them removed.
yeah.
Or if the neighbor says, yeah, they're visiting me, fine, that's what happens. You won't call the police. But, yeah, they have a right to remove cars on their property, on their street. So
Okay.
they do have that right.
But I think to answer your question, you go from Fletcher to Adam,
No, well, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Park.
that's
It's
for-
called Lily Drive.
yeah, that's where the continue through.
It will continue,
Yes.
and we can use it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you.
There was also a question, and if anybody wants to come up, just come up. There was also a question about signage, things like that. They have to abide by whatever state codes there are, city code. So obviously, we're going to decide where the stop signs go and
Speed limits.
things like that.
Yeah, Chamber, 637 Niagara Street. I have a problem with the condo status. I thought that you offered that to them, or you're going to offer it to them. I'm thinking that if you've got a potential 16 million in taxes, you're gonna be leaving like 6 million on the table by offering that status. My other question was about the wetlands up there. I understand that you might put in another retention pond or dry pond, like you did over at Spalding. I'm not real sure about those detention ponds, but what about a fence around it? Because it's so close to Veterans Park, and you've got children up there.
There were-
Safety would be,
We've talked about a fence around it, and that's something that'll have to be agreed to.
okay. And who's gonna put that pond in? Us, the
No.
city, or that's
No.
part of Natalia?
That's part of the town.
And it'll be up by the water tank?
Yes. And as far as
The wetlands.
the wetland, there will be a section of wetlands that will be moved, because whenever you have a wetland situation, you can't, it's not buildable. But if you do, you have to create a wetland in a different area. It's a very small portion of the property.
So the water is going to leach, and it's gonna leach what, into our sewer system, or into where?
I think what Carl's saying is that they mitigate the wetlands, so if there's a small portion of wetlands, they create the wetland in another part, but it'll all go into the retention pond. It won't go into the,
And the retention pond's supposed to drain within 24 hours or something?
Yes, yes.
what you find in many cases when they develop property like that, drainage issues that may be there today because of the development may actually improve.
Really consider that condo status, so, because I pay a lot more than 80,000 for my house, and I'm paying 100% taxes on it.
Just to touch on that first question that she asked, and Dave Morano, he touched on it earlier. In this particular situation, the deal probably, well, not probably, it wouldn't have happened if they didn't have an opportunity for a tax incentive of some sort. But from a city standpoint, we don't take any action on that tax status. That is purely Natalia taking the action. We're not taking any action.
They file that with the New York State Attorney General's office.
And that,
We
it's an
really have
expensive
no control.
proposition.
I mean, these aren't apartment complexes, these are single-family homes.
Right,
Right.
condo status exists if you go into, and I can give you, if you wanted to see what some of those things look like, I can tell you where you can go look in Amherst, where there are single-family homes with condominium status. They exist in Amherst, they exist in Lancaster, they exist in Clarence, they exist in Hamburg. So it's a very commonly used thing, quite frankly.
Sorry. status is a deterrent rather than an advantage to people. I know a lot of people that are in patio homes, subdivisions with condo status, whatever, they don't like it anymore. They're paying an extra $150 to $200 and something a month for rules and regulations they don't like. They're not being plowed out early enough, that they're shoveling their own driveways. They'd like to do their own lawns in the summer when the nice weather is in.
Well, it's personal preference. I don't disagree with you. I mean, there's personal preference. I mean, some people want a maintenance-free lifestyle. Some people still enjoy it. My mother is 79 years old. She lives in a ranch. Now, she pays between snow plowing and lawn cutting probably close to $2,000 a year because she is too old to take care of that, and her son isn't as hardworking as she'd like him to be. So,
She could find it for a lot less money than that.
well, you're right. But point is, it's personal preference. You know, some folks because of medical issues or whatever. Some folks because of work requirements. I will tell you this, though. Joe McIver is the Executive Vice President of Niagara Frontier Builders Association. I was in a meeting with Joe, and anyone can call him here. If it wasn't for the condominium law, per Joe McIver, the building industry in West New York would not exist today. Because that's what, I know what you're saying, but most, if you look in the communities where a lot of new construction is going on, and I can speak specifically to Lancaster, we were building more properties that had condominium status than without.
Okay, but people like to have a choice.
Oh, you're right.
And
You're
if
right.
if you're not given a choice, it might be a deterrent.
No, that's a good point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
When Natalia and Bert gave us their proposal, both said that they would pay the meeting structure. And pay us for the land. I said at the meeting, it's a win-win for us. New construction, no cost. From day one, they said they want us to pay for the infrastructure. I said no, Will said no, and the other members said no. They had to have 4 votes for us to pay for it, which is over $2 million. Now look at the two proposals. Burke, 55 homes, $160,000 homes. Okay, so they're going to be assessed $160,000, and that's about. Well, let's reverse that. Let's talk about Natalie first. He's building a home for $250,000. They're going to get 40% off on $250,000. My taxes are over $9,000. People that buy that home, their taxes are going to be $6,000 because they're getting 40% off. Burke builds a $180,000 home, and those people will be paying $6,000. There's no loss, except the people who have an upscale home won't pay the difference. For $70,000 more for the home, they're going to have an association, and they're going to have to pay. Believe me, they're going to have to pay. I know, I live with them. And it's not easy. And the association controls what goes on there as long as they don't supersede local law.
Go on.
Martha Olka, Cleveland Avenue. I just have a question. If they don't build on the land, the $12,000 per acre will still be assessed at $12,000, or will we give them a
Oh, no.
discount also?
What'll happen, is it Murray? All right, Murray, what'll happen is when that, right now that property currently exists on our tax rolls, what we call roll section 8, which is tax exempt. The day that sale goes through, that property will move to roll section 1, or taxable, and we'll use that sale price. The best indication of value is a recent sale price in that situation. So the new assessment then will become $192,000. That parcel actually has to be created. What'll happen is there's a parcel up there and it's part of another parcel. When they go and buy it, a new parcel will be created with what's called SPL, or section, block, and lot number. And then once that's done, that $192,000 will go on and add value. And then as those lots become developed and the streets go in and they're shovel ready, and then each individual lot gets an SPL, then we will put individual assessments on the land, probably in the neighborhood of about $25,000 per lot.
Thank you.
Another part that I forgot to mention too, when we do, with development of the contract, it's not that we sell half the land to Natalia and that's for that. I mean, there's gonna be timelines, there's gonna be a reverter clause, you know, so there's more to it if in fact things don't work out.
Roger Halsey for Sunday, Adam Street. Mr. Morano, I'm just amazed because I saw 3 appraisals for that property.
Correct.
And they ranged from $510,000 to $580,000. Can you tell me, from 2008 till today, any real estate in the city of Tonawanda has lost more than half of its value?
Well, let me state this. The appraisal that was currently done was done by a appraiser who is licensed by New York State.
Were the other 3?
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. Now, the other 3, let's talk about the other 3. The other 3 used sales from 2005 and 2006. One of the appraisals that was done in 2008 used 2 sales of commercial land on Union Road in West Seneca to determine a value. So, quite frankly, those previous appraisals, I don't think were done very well, quite frankly. Now, the market has changed. You're right, the real vacant land back in the mid-2000s, when there was a lot more building going on, was worth more. The values that was done, I will tell you this, no appraiser who I would deal with is going to risk their license. If you're implying that we asked them to produce a number, that is absolutely unequivocally wrong. The number was produced by sound appraisal practice, and the nature of appraisers, Roger, quite frankly, 3 different people could appraise a property, 3 different licensed appraisers, and you're probably going to get 3 different values. I truly believe that the appraisal numbers that we have are more in line. When I saw those appraisals, those 500, listen, I've seen a lot of vacant land sales in my career. Nowhere in the high demand areas of Western New York, Lancaster, Clarence, Amherst, was vacant land for residential development going at $50,000 an acre. Just wasn't happening. $40,000 an acre. It was selling more for $10,000 to $15,000. And the numbers we have, I think, are more reflective of what is a fair price.
You and Mr. Zeiss both praised the green building that Mr. Natali has done. And you say that he can get the condo rate at 60% what everybody else pays. And I have an article from Business First that says Senator Grisanti has a bill going through Albany that would allow anybody building new homes to be eligible for property tax exemption up to 35% for a period not to exceed 20 years if they meet certain environmental or green codes as defined by the National Association of Home Builders. So is it correct that he has the condo rate at 60%? This bill passes Albany.
Can't get it.
He can't get it.
There's Grisani's law. There's currently a law in the book called Real Property Tax Law 470. In my folder in the back, I've got the details on it. Real Property Tax Law 470 really is already in place. The Grisani bill really probably won't ever get passed, but there is a law in the books right now, Real Property Tax Law 470, and I'm going to try and go from memory as much as I can. But it's based on homes being built meeting certain LEED, L-E-E-D technologies, and you get up to, depending if it's a platinum, gold, or silver, a certain level of exemptions. These properties will not be subject to that. You cannot double dip on these property tax laws. It's either one or the other. And quite frankly, the LEED law is up to 10 years where it's 100. If you build to, I don't know what's best, platinum or gold, but whatever the highest level of LEED is, you get 7 years at 100% exemption. 100, not 30 or 40, 100. So they can't double dip, Mr. John.
So if he built it to the highest standard, he could get 100% tax exemption?
Not he, the property owner would get it.
The property
The
owner.
property owner would get it. I think it's on.
You can have a whole development where they pay no taxes.
Well, you could. I think the law. In fact,
Just because I
bring that folder up, you would.
in the same article, it mentions a certain developer, Mr. Grisanti, who built a whole subdivision that way I forget what that was, it's called the Riviera Green Complex.
Riviera Greens. Yeah, Riviera Greens is a current subdivision at the Talley Building in Clarence. But the Grisanti law isn't even a law. Let me get you the specs on
So
470.
so you're saying that he could just forget the condo rate and go for the green, and then pay no tax?
He could.
To the homeowners.
I got the information right here. Real property tax law 470 says such exemptions shall be to the extent of any increase in assessed value resulting from the construction or reconstruction of property meeting LEED certification. And if it's platinum, they get 6 years at 100%. So you bring up a good point. Somebody could build a subdivision if this law is passed, or with this law, and for 6 years, the only things that would be taxed would be the land. So if you got a house at 250 and the land's worth 25, it will be 25. So right now, I don't know of any communities.
With that one, isn't there platinum, gold, and silver?
Yeah, silver would be 3 years at 100, gold would be 4 years at 100, and platinum is 6 years at 100, and then a year at 80, 60, 40, and 20. Right now, I have not seen this being used, but this is probably a law that's going to supersede what Grisani, I have a copy of the Grisani proposal in here somewhere.
And just so that you know, he said he's never built beyond the silver level. He said the platinum level is almost impossible in this area to build to. There was another point that I wanted to make, and just threw it up my head.
The Grisani law, just for those, is currently under Senate Bill 6664, under real property tax law, and that's where it sits, but it's gone nowhere but from there. And I think 470, I think quite frankly, the law that's in place, the 470, will probably supersede the Grisani. Yes, in 470, great point, Carl. Real property tax law 470 is an opt-in. The municipality actually has to opt in. So you can, for example, the city could agree to it, and the schools could not. The county could not. No different than any of our exemptions, veterans exemptions. You know, people realize the municipality is not under any obligation to opt in under a veterans exemption. Certainly they should. I'm a veteran, I'm glad they do. But it's a local opt-in is what it's called.
And we'd have to opt into that, the one you're talking about now.
The only other thing is you talk about the process, and I've argued the process from the beginning. And you keep saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. This is page 19 of the handbook for alienation from New York State. Point 3, involving the public. Involve the public early in the process is highly recommended. Public involvement is encouraged and often required when implementing the secret process, and accomplishing this early in the process is encouraged under seeker as well. This process began in 2005. I checked with the city clerk. No public hearings going all the way back to January 2004. No seeker studies have been done. And you're already, it's already past Albany. You're negotiating with a developer. So you've jumped 5 steps ahead, because that would probably be step 9 or 10 in this. And you're talking about, well, we're going to do it.